What does it take for a machine to last longer than the company that made it? Survive wars, economic problems, and technical changes, and still work well more than 50 years after it was initially built? How did an engine made before World War II become so dependable and strong that it powered tanks across Europe, patrol boats across the Atlantic, and trucks and buses across American highways for decades? Also, if these engines were so durable and popular, why did the globe stop using them? The story of Detroit Diesel isn't just about a company. It's also about a way of thinking about engineering, about mechanical skills that were honed in battle, polished by need, and treasured by individuals who can still hear the roar of a two-stroke diesel coming to life. Diesel engines were all the rage in the 1930s. Because they were heavy and slow, most of their uses were limited to locomotives, ships, and stationary power plants. Yes, it was strong, but it wasn't right for trucks, buses, or military vehicles, which needed something smaller and more adaptable. General Motors, which is always looking for new ideas, saw an opportunity that no one else was willing to take. What if you could make a diesel engine smaller so that it could compete with gasoline engines and still be as tough as its bigger cousins? Could such a machine change the balance of power in both war and business? In 1938, General Motors made its dream of making diesel engines in Detroit a reality by starting the Detroit Diesel Engine Division. Detroit Diesel was very interested in the idea of mass production, while other companies saw diesels as custom-made gadgets that were only created in small numbers. They built engines the same way they built cars, on assembly lines with interchangeable parts, modular families, and standard pieces that could be made bigger or smaller depending on the use. It was very different from regular diesel fuel, and when the time came for war, it turned out to be a smart strategy. The Series 71 engine came just in time and changed everything. It quickly became an essential part of the Allied war machine since it could be built in many different ways and had a displacement of 71 cubic inches per cylinder. In 1943, Detroit Diesel made more than 57,000 engines a year, or one engine every 10 minutes. This was done to provide military equipment that needed a steady stream of production. These engines were used to grind tanks on the battlefields of Europe, storm landing craft on the beaches of Normandy, and hunt German submarines in the Atlantic Ocean with Navy patrol boats. The soldiers who used them would never forget the sound, a piercing mechanical whine that pierced through the chaos of war and became a symbol of survival. The Series 71 was different from other models, not just because of how many it was made, but also because of how it looked. The Detroit Diesel had a two-stroke diesel engine, which meant that it fired every time the crankshaft turned. This meant that it could get greater power from a smaller block of fuel than the four-stroke diesels that were the most typical at the time. Every engine had a root supercharger installed so that this could happen. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a part that was necessary for the design. The blower not only made sure that the engine burned all of its fuel, but it also brought in fresh air and removed exhaust gases, which made the engine whine. This meant that soldiers, sailors, and mechanics required engines that not only worked well, but also could be counted on to work even in the worst of situations. And when something did go wrong, it was easy to remedy. The blower could handle a lot of stress. The unit injectors could be changed out independently, and important parts could be reached without having to take the engine out. Not only was this focus on how easy it was to work on the field useful, but it might also save lives. As the war came to an end, Detroit Diesel had to ask itself if an engine that was built to win wars could also win in business when there was no conflict. The answer was a loud yes. As the Series 71 family grew, countless variations were made, From little three-cylinder models for light-duty vehicles to huge 24-cylinder models that could make more than 1,800 horsepower. The best part of the design was how modular it was. All of the parts, like pistons, rods, injectors, and many more, could be swapped out. This kept costs down and made repairs easy. Bus drivers found that the 6V71 worked best for stop-and-go service. Fire agencies chose the 8V71 for their pumpers because they knew it would give them instant power when lives were on the line. Construction workers used them to push bulldozers, cranes, and other heavy machinery through tough jobs. The answer was starting to become clearer in the 1980s. Even while pollution standards were getting stricter, the scavenging technique that gave the two-stroke its power also caused it to lose fuel and make smoke. Cities began to ask for quieter buses, and the sound of a screamin' Jimmy was no longer acceptable in places that were already crowded. Competitors like Cummins and Caterpillar, who had invested early in four-stroke technology, offered engines that were cleaner, quieter, and more efficient. How much can Detroit diesel change itself? That was in 1987. The Series 60 was Detroit Diesel's first four-stroke engine when it came out. It had all electronic controls, precise fuel injection, and it consumed 15 to 20% less gasoline than the two-strokes that had been used before it. It changed the game and saved the business. By the start of the 1990s, Detroit Diesel had already taken a third of the truck market in North Atlantic countries. But this win came with a gentle exit. The two-stroke engines that had helped the company go from war to success were slowly phased out, and their noise became less obvious in everyday life. But they never really went away. Even though it has been decades since the final Detroit Diesel two-stroke was made and shipped off the assembly line, they are still in use today. Fishing boats and tugboats still often utilize Series 70s 1s and 90s 2s. Sawmills and mining equipment are what keep them going at industrial centers. In undeveloped countries, people still ride buses that have engines that should have been taken out of service a long time ago. How can they stay alive? This could be because they are a type of building that is no longer used. These engines were made with the idea of survivability in mind, not intentional obsolescence. They were meant to be understood, fixed, and trusted. In a world where hybrids, silent electric motors, and computer diagnostics are the norm, a mechanical monster that screams out its presence and won't die is almost rebellious. But what is the legacy of Detroit Diesel's two-stroke engines? Is it because they helped win a big battle, worked in every part of the industry for decades, or have a unique voice that echoes wherever they go? Or does it have a deeper meaning, reminding us that machines can be more than just tools, and that they can be made with a philosophy of durability and repairability that lasts longer than the creation process itself? Even if the world has changed, the Screamin' Jimmy still has a story to tell, and this will always be the case, no matter how others react. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.